And I think
I
we're live. Actually, I think we're ready to go. I, I do. Anyway, welcome, viewers. This is a special one today for a couple of reasons. One, we've been on a slight hiatus, as everyone's aware that Christmas was on a Thursday, where we've programmed this to happen every Thursday, and so was New Year's Day. So we've taken a break. Um, and our last one was Irving Fryer before the holidays, and I decided we'd take one more extra week because our special guest today of In the Huddle is Ron Wooten, and he's brought to you by Mark Cruz and family. Over the years, Mark has supported Patriots alumni with mentoring and advice, and along with his family has participated in all of our events and programs. Patriots alumni and its impact in the community does not exist without Mark Cruz. Thank you, Mark Cruz and family. Welcome in, Ron Wooten. Boy, am I glad we got you part. Now, partner, I started this whole thing out with all of my teammates from the 70s, or at least guys that owed me enough favors that would agree to come on with me. So we washed through the 70s with, go ahead and name one, he was there. And we've just now started into the 80s. We've had Irving Fryer, we've had Tony Collins, and now you are third up to make it happen. So really glad to find you, catch up with you, and have you on board in the huddle.
Well, thanks, Pete. Of course, any reason to have a conversation with you, I would jump on. But also the lineup you've had, I'm very flattered that I made the cut. So I appreciate you thinking about me.
Oh, no question. It's been way too long, Ron Wooten. I know that in certain parts of our after football life, we've been able to connect. When I was in the software business, I spent quite a bit of time down at Research Triangle Park, right in the middle of where you were in that Raleigh-Durham area. And we had a chance to get caught up, but we don't do it often enough, and we don't do it long enough as far as I'm concerned.
Well, when you're great friends, and even if you go 20 years, it's like it was yesterday when you get a chance to catch up. So
no question. Anyway, it's talking to my teammates brings back so many memories. You came out of University of North Carolina, part of that 81 draft that really found an awful lot of guys. Brian Holloway was in that draft. Donnie Blackman was in that draft. Of course, you helped me out because I'll probably forget a bunch of them. But there was Tony Collins, that's right. So there was 4 or 5 starters came out of that draft. And it wasn't like all of you were high draft picks. I think you were 5th.
Right. And I shouldn't leave out my high school teammate, Lynn Dawson.
That's right, Lynn Dawson.
Yeah.
If you ever bump into him, tell him he owes me about 3 phone calls. I've been leaving messages all over the world for him. In fact, we had his brother-in-law, Tony McGee, on with Ray Hamilton. I laughed till I had creases in my face with those two. But anyway, it was yeah. But that 81 draft was a lot of impact players on that.
Yeah, looking back, certainly, and I don't think we quite expected it. We didn't know what to expect, to be honest with you, going up to the Patriots. But I think it was a perfect mix. You've been through the 70s players, and they're Hall of Fame quality. A lot of first-round draft picks, and like yourself, and the core at the Patriots was amazing.
Yeah.
With really, of course, the talent was there, but I was blown away by the leadership. The guys you've interviewed, and even though the first year there wasn't a successful year, and there was some changeover, the desire to win and compete and confidence was always there. And I think that's probably why, a lot of my teammates, played important roles, because we had the infrastructure with you guys.
Well, and we've made that comment throughout a lot of these episodes, as it was a wonderful mix of veterans and then young players. And it always kind of seemed that way. even when I was drafted in 1976, and the Patriots had very little success, back in the early 70s and all that kind of stuff, and still were stretching and trying to find themselves. But they had so much talent, but Chuck Fairbanks and Ron Earhart and those guys put together enough veteran, like my mentor was a guy named Bob McKay. I wish you'd have had a chance to play on the same kind of teams as he. John Hanna was in his third year when I was a rookie, so he was kind of considered in that younger class, but an extreme talent. But you sprinkle in, like Tony McGee, like George Webster was a part of that team. Steve Zabel was a guy who played with Philadelphia for a number of years, and then Fairbanks brought him in, so that he had enough guys to help train and kind of rein in the talent and get them used to veterans. So then it was my turn to mentor you guys. When you came in 1981, I was in my sixth season, your rookie year that way. And so it was, it was kind of a fun mix that way.
Yeah, it was. And, I think, the offensive line was very veteran and had great leadership. And also having Jim Ringo around, I don't really know how many years he coached you, Pete. I only had him around 1 year, but.
Yeah, I had him 4 years. I had the distinct privilege of being around him for that long.
He was the first sort of serious coach I'd been around, to be honest with you, about, how you approach line play, and the way you guys played with his guidance was pretty amazing. Very physical, but smart. And, it was kind of a dream come true to be able to step into that.
Yeah, Jim, that was a great coaching staff. And it was a shame that what we won 2 football games in 1981. And that was the end of Ron Earhart and that staff. But you think, Ron Earhart himself, they name offenses after him. He was, he left here and went on to a fabulous career as an offensive coordinator and a developer at Pittsburgh Steelers. And but Jim Ringo, he not only taught you the X's and O's and the execution of things, but what it meant to be an offensive lineman. He played 16 years in the Lombardi era, and so when he said this is the way you got to do it and make it happen, you listened.
Oh yeah,
for
sure. It was hard to replace him and duplicate that, but
yeah, they never did. They never did replace that. 82 came in Ron Meyer and that whole staff, and when that, 81 was like, there was an exodus out of the Patriots. We lost, you think about it, Russ Francis, Andy Johnson, Sam Cunningham, Mike Haynes. After that season, it just seemed like it was a purge for some reason in some sorts. But we lost an awful lot of talent going from 81 to 82.
Yeah, no, it was a lot. But I would say on the offensive line, you guys were such a senior, experienced group. And not just that, but your understanding of the game, blocking schemes. I remember sitting in meetings and you and John were basically deciding how we were going to block the plays. And, even that next year, we started to be very successful running the football. And, it was a bad year. And next thing you know, we were very competitive because of, I think, the offensive line play and the leadership you guys brought.
Well, I've always got the sense, even not just as a Patriot, but, I had the privilege of going on to coach a little bit after my football career, and I would always heard it, but the offensive line sets the tempo, sets the not only the tempo but the attitude, I think, of a football team in practice, and it carries over into games. And to be part of what we had was really special. It was, we had some years before you got there in 76 and 78, we were setting records. In fact, that
Oh, yeah.
78 record stood until Baltimore beat it in 2019, and it took 40 some years for somebody to get close. And but we continue to be able to run the football. We'll talk about it here in a little bit, but that AFC Championship game in Miami, and Raymond Berry said he put it right in our laps. He said Dan Marino has a tough time scoring from his own bench area. So O-line, when we get the ball, keep it. And defense got us the ball 6 times in turnovers, and we just smashed them in the face all day.
Yeah, as a matter of fact,
What do you got?
My grandson, who you met, collects memorabilia, and he and my wife, this helmet was on the internet, and they bought it. It was actually my game helmet.
No kidding.
And my grandson asked me, you can see orange, blue paint on it and scars.
Yeah. Which
is kind of ridiculous, Pete. Right? And the bent face mask.
Yeah.
But, thinking back on games like that, there wasn't any surprise about what was happening.
No.
On the defense either.
No. They knew we were coming downhill at them, and they.
I mean,
That's amazing.
Well, your helmet was the same. It wasn't just my helmet, but.
It's around here somewhere too. It'd take me a minute or two to dredge up, but I bet we share scars.
But isn't it kind of ridiculous? The way, it's just the way we played back then. The game's gotten better, but to your point, that was the road to the AFC Championship.
Yeah, no question it was. I think Tony Eason threw the ball 13 times in that game. 3 of them were for touchdowns, and we just in between each 10-yard line, we just smashed them in the face all day long. That was prime. That was without question. There's not even a close second. The greatest, funnest football game I've ever played in. To overcome all the history that happened to us in Miami and the jinx that existed. No Patriot team had ever beaten them down there in the Orange Bowl, and they had. That they had a super offense with Dan Marino. They had the killer bee defense that, flew around and did all that kind of stuff. But man, when it came down to, we just smashed them. It was so much fun. I remember Mike Charles, who was the nose guard, bragged up how he was going to tear the interior offensive lineman up for the New England Patriots. And, about midway through the third quarter, he'd had just about enough. He was one of the few people I'd ever see break his sword and ran off the field. He'd had enough of us coming downhill at him.
Yeah, well, I'm glad he had enough then, because I don't know how much more we had left. But
we had him fooled, that's for sure. But that was that was a fun game. That whole road, that whole road to the playoffs. We were 3rd in the AFC East going into the thing. We were road warriors. We went and beat the Jets at the Meadowlands, and then the Raiders out in Los Angeles. But then to show up there and do it to Miami, what we did was just phenomenal. That was a great stretch.
Yeah, we played to our strengths, and certainly reached our potential. There's no question. We didn't leave anything on the field.
No, we certainly didn't.
Right.
When we had to face the Bears, they'd have had to miss the bus for us to have much more of a chance at that deal. That was a great football team. And, I think back on that game, that Super Bowl game, and as, our road through the playoffs went right with the offensive line. Just let's play some smash mouth football and see what we did. We did that whole season. And that Super Bowl, my recollection of it was we kind of came off that game plan and started trying to chuck the football around. And we had some early opportunities that didn't come forward. And then before long, we were playing from so far behind that we had no choice. But it would have been fun to line up, and don't know if it had changed the outcome, but just to match our strength with their strength. And ours was running the football, and theirs was not letting teams do it. And it would have been a lot of fun to try to test that.
Yeah, I remember being physically ill for weeks after that game. Just because of being so disappointed. But looking back now, that was a tremendous achievement in Patriot history.
Of course.
When people ask, what I used to do, and I said, well, I played for the Patriots, and they go, oh, well, you won all those Super Bowls. I said, well, no, we were in Super Bowl 20, and they remember the Bears game, and my response is, if you go to 11 Super Bowls, you have to go to your first Super Bowl.
Right.
You don't get to 11 because the first one.
Right.
And it's a hard road to get to the first one. And that was a big deal for us, an AFC championship. And I look at it with great pride of achievement, right? Unfortunately, the way it works is you lose by 1 point or 50, you still came in second, right? But I have no regrets about that. I saw that as a great team achievement. And it's interesting. I'm a Panther season ticket holder. And I watched Cam and that team a lot and attended a lot of games. And their Super Bowl team was a lot like our team. They were the most physical team in the league that year. They made it to play Denver, but they were a little bit one-dimensional, a little bit like us. And you don't beat great teams unless you're fully balanced.
Right.
But taking a team that's a little one-dimensional all the way is quite an achievement.
No question. Yeah, I'm not sure that I could call what I feel about that game as a regret, because it, I remember the feeling in the locker room after that, the feeling that I had. I mean, we gave everything we had, even in that football game, and to have it wash over us the way it did and be so out of control was a little frustrating. But you look back on that stretch run that we made, that I don't know if you were part of the group. There was a bunch of us that were invited to go to a Celtics game between when we beat the Raiders and when we had to go down to, from the AFC Championship game and to when we had to go down to New Orleans for the Super Bowl. We were invited to the Boston Garden, and that was, so that's 85 season, early 1986. So that's McHale, Bird, and Parrish Celtics, right? And I'll never forget, because we were up in the suites. There was, I don't know, a half a dozen or 8 of us that were down there. But during the third quarter, they actually stopped the game and announced that we were there and introduced us. And the Boston Celtics, world champion Boston Celtics, stood and applauded. So for a short moment in time, the New England Patriots felt like a professional team in Boston, which is hard to do, but you got Celtics and Red Sox and Bruins who had been winning, so we were like the poor kids on the block. But for that one, and how about, landing at Providence Airport, at TF Green Airport after the AFC Championship game. And of course, security is a little bit different now than it was back then, but there were 20 or 30,000 fans on the tarmac. They had to stop the airplane in the middle of the taxiway because it couldn't get to the gate. Remember that?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
It
was a great time. And like I said, I think it really put the organization on the map. So it's a big achievement.
Yeah, it was a big achievement. I had the privilege of doing some of the broadcasts for the Patriots when I moved back to Boston from Oregon back in 96, 97. I started doing the pre and the post game for the Patriots on WBCN, Rock Radio Network. But anyway, so I got to go to the first Super Bowl win down in New Orleans against the Rams. And I'll never forget going down after the broadcast was over, all of the confetti had flown and guys were coming out of the locker room, and Willie McGinnis was coming out, feeling as good as as he must have been feeling. And he said to me, thank you. If it weren't for you, if it weren't for the generations before us, I don't know that we'd appreciate where we are today. So, I mean, it's just that it all became kind of all inclusive as being Patriots then.
Yeah. I mean, we started the conversation talking about the 81 class, and, the way that, the offensive line, Brian Holloway, my first roommate as a pro, started that game with me. And of course, Blackman, Lynn Dawson started that game as a pro.
Yeah.
For my hometown. I mean, it's, I do take a lot of pride. You want your draft class to be significant and contribute. So, we certainly did. Tony Collins, right down the road, he was a rival. You probably don't know this, at East Carolina and UNC. And Lynn was a rival at NC State, which is our
Right.
big rival. So
That's right.
it was fun to be with that group for that
Yeah.
number of years.
Yeah. No, yeah. And, you're right. You take kind of a pride with the guys that you came in with. My draft class was Tim Fox and Mike Haynes, pretty much by the time you got there, I was the Lone Ranger out of that whole thing. But, no, you feel like you want to, you're part of a big deal. And then, then we came together and as an offensive line, I got an opportunity to play with the Leon Gray, John Hanna, Sam Adams, Bill Ankaitis, Tommy Neville offensive line. And then to translate that into, let's not forget about Bobby Kreider, coming in for,
Yeah.
he was like an unguided missile up there. And, so so the offensive line, although it changed a little bit, there was an evolution that there was, a carryover from generation to generation. John spanned it all, Hogg spanned it all. But, to have the same kind of success with a different offensive line was sure meaningful.
I just want to correct you on one thing, Pete.
What's that?
Because I think you coined the term. Critter Bear's nickname was Unguided Muscle.
Unguided muscle. Boy, he was held deep in election. If going straight ahead, if someone wanted to stand in front of him and not make any move or a slant or a swim move or something, he would eat them alive. But the minute he had to turn or come down on, I don't know how many defensive ends caught me on my hip because he couldn't pick up that inside rip. It's just like, but he was, boy, I tell you, straight ahead, he was one of the best drive blockers I'd ever seen.
Yeah. Well, I got to play beside him when he moved to tackle. So he was a good guy to have on that side of you, I can tell you.
No question. No question. Yeah, that was certainly a lot of fun. Let's talk a little bit about, because we usually do with this generation is what Raymond Berry meant. We talked about, like your rookie year, we had, I think, one of the best coaching staffs with Ron Earhart, and we had some great coaches on that. We already talked about Jim Ringo being part of that. There were some really great coaches, and Ron Meyer came in, and that was just weird. I don't know how else to say it, but there were some good coaches that came in with him. Steve Sidwell turned out to be a good defensive coordinator, great defensive coordinator, not only with the Patriots, but out with the Seahawks for a couple of years. Dante Scarnecchia, who just, a couple of years ago retired as a long-term Patriot, came in with that staff. So it wasn't like they were, wanting for coaches, but it just was kind of a weird situation. He wasn't their first choice as coach. In fact, I think he was third or fourth choice. And they kind of whittled it down to him and accept it. I think he was trying to be a little bit of something that he wasn't. A hard, tough guy. He was more of a front guy and let the rest of the whole organization kind of win. But then, that the way that it fell apart, and then they bring Raymond Berry in at the end of that of the 84 season. Halfway through was it the 84 season he came in? I think it was.
Yeah.
Anyway, he inherited a mess.
That's probably right. Yeah.
Yeah, he inherited a mess. But you know, when it really boiled down to it, he made such a big impact to a lot of us individually, and really turned the ship around to us all collectively, that he really did a terrific job. Raymond did.
Well, I remembered a little bit differently, Pete.
Okay.
He didn't come in. You guys demanded that he be hired. And I think you and Hogg, John in particular, were very vocal advocates about bringing him in. So I appreciate that, by the way.
Yeah.
The rest is history. But it was interesting to me, you know, a younger guy sitting back and listening to that and watching it. And, you know, so I think that was kind of a player revolt and a guy available who was an excellent coach. You know, I've had a long-term relationship with Raymond since I left New England and he left. He was at my daughter's wedding, you know, and the kind of respect I have for him and just his personal integrity and those things meant a lot to me. But as a football coach, I think it was more his professional attitude, right, that brought us together. You know, we were treated like professionals and men, and he had a certain expectation, personal responsibility about doing your job.
Yeah.
Of course, there was talent there to do that, wasn't it? That Coach Meyer didn't seem to recognize, and so it was interesting. I think things got very positive very quickly, just because of him being a real pro.
Yeah.
And
I remember when he came in '84, of course, most of the staff stayed. They fired only Ron Meyer and the rest of the staff stayed. So that had to be an odd experience for them and for Raymond. But I remember Raymond not saying an awful lot, but spent the majority of his time, energy, and effort of getting to know all of the individual players. I mean, he knew your wife's name, your family, your kids' names, you know, where you came from. So he built, you know, a personal relationship with each of the players to the point where the players felt for the first time in a long time that someone cared about them. You know, so I think that made a huge difference. And I think he challenged us. I don't know, maybe the little things is what he concentrated on. It wasn't winning and losing, but it was the things you have to do that enable you to win. And it was the little things. Remember, recovering fumbles was a part of our practice, you know, challenging us to go 100%. You know, I heard that since I was playing in high school, that you have to give it 110% and you got to do it on every down. But it was he that really taught us how to do that, you know, and how important it was, because he challenged us to grade ourselves, because only we knew what kind of effort we were making when the ball was snapped till the whistle blew, and did we give it everything that we had on every individual play. And when I started evaluating how I was playing, I hadn't played like that. And it was he that challenged us to make us, so he made me a better player for that reason too. But I think the whole personal relationship was really where he got things turned around.
Yeah. I haven't coached any professionally since leaving like you have, Pete, but I've coached a lot of children and grandchildren. And I still use some of Raymond's sayings. I don't know if you remember this, but you know, we played on a lot of sloppy fields.
Yeah.
And when he saw a receiver slip or a running back slip, I mean, he wouldn't curse at him he would say, you got to know your footing, right? It doesn't matter if the field's muddy and wet, you have to stand up. So, slow down your cut because you need to stay on your feet, right? And just little basic stuff like that. But, and the effort thing, as you mentioned, I think was probably the number one thing. And, Raymond didn't spend a lot of time on the offensive line. He spent a lot of time with the receivers, as you should. And I'm sure Irving, was complimentary of the things he learned and our other receivers from Raymond. But you talk about the effort. I don't know if you remember this, but I think I got one compliment from Raymond, and it wasn't deserved. We were playing in Miami. It ended up being a 6-3 football game, like in '88. And I was blocking the backside linebacker, and I blocked him 20 yards up the field, staying with him, blocking him. And then I kind of just relaxed and let him go. Well, little did I know the play was broken. He made the tackle, and it would have been a touchdown. And Raymond said to me during the film session, "That's a great block, Ron." And I felt guilty, and I should have said, "You know what, Coach? I didn't finish it." So the point is, playing sports, as you mentioned, you got to go to the whistle, and you don't know when that mattered. We ended up winning 6-3, right? Which that must have been post Marino. He must have been hurt that game, but but lessons learned and very important stuff you take with you, right?
No question. How much of that, I asked this with a lot of our guests, how much of that does that carry over into the day-to-day world? You've been very successful both in football and in your after football life, in a second career. How much of that do you attribute to lessons learned on a football field?
They don't carry over exactly. And what I'm saying is, I'm losing my screen here. Sorry about that. Okay. The things as a professional team that make us successful, which is this drive and commitment and intensity and ownership of the business at like all cost. That's a rare thing in the business world. It took me a while, quite honestly, Pete, to learn not to have those expectations of all my peers, right? I mean, in a locker room, I know the Patriots locker room, I actually think it's a good environment that you're pushing each other so hard that, sometimes you come to blows. I don't think that's a bad thing, because there's a lot at stake for everybody in the locker room. Yeah. If one guy's not performing, then you don't win games, right? And it's not quite that way in the business world. It took me a little while to understand, have proper expectations for people, and their job's not their whole life. But I feel like that was kind of all or nothing for us. Right. Like, this is what we do, and we got to win at all costs, and we're all in. So in the corporate world, it's a little different. However, as you know, there's no substitute for commitment and intensity in your job. And the ability to have challenges, which every football team does, and not quit and find ways to get through them and get to the other side. And I know people don't think it's appropriate that, hard work results in success, but over time it does, right? And as a football player, we worked really hard all the time.
Yeah.
So, I would say the commitment to what you're doing and being willing to, give it all, which you have to do in professional football. It's, you, I can't remember Dwight Wheeler. You remember Dwight?
Oh yeah, Wimpy.
Yeah, Wimpy told me, and I've actually used this in my professional endeavors, is you can't be going out there half cocked. He told me that when I was a rookie.
Mm.
And you've got to be ready and prepared. And he had a lot of wisdom, but that's the truth.
That's the truth.
Don't go into a situation until you're fully ready
Well,
and committed to it.
that's the difference that the corporate world is different than the football world, is because in the football world, your life cycles in 1 week increments.
Right.
In the corporate world, every day is game day. You may not have the time to implement a game plan and work that and execute it on one day. Every day you need to show up, not half cocked. Well, not half cocked. That's a different story. You need to be fully loaded when you get sometimes in the corporate world.
Yeah, and the thing that I've come to value about people's achievements is not so much what they achieve, it's what they achieve vis-a-vis their potential. And of course, in professional football, everybody has extraordinarily high potential, and we have big expectations. In a normal business world, you need to understand what people's potential are, encourage them to work towards it, contribute at that level.
Mm.
And if you do that, you end up in a good place. But at professional football, everybody has super high potential. And so the expectations are proper, I think, at that level. And you can certainly see it with the teams we had, but the modern day Patriots are a great example of that, right?
Yeah, no question. Well, what are you up to these days? Are you still in the workaday world? Are you I know you're down in Carolina, still in North Carolina.
Yeah, so here in Raleigh, which is close to Chapel Hill, UNC, where I went to school. Ann and I are big. We're donors, and we take a lot of opportunity to go there to football games and take the whole family. We enjoy the proximity to that. I'm still working. I have the opportunity of having my son Ryan, who you remember as a toddler, working in the same financial services organization as me, and so that's great. I've got a group of partners in that business that we've been together 20 years.
Mm.
And it's a small business with a lot of assets under management, and we have a similar culture, I think, Pete, to what you fostered in New England with the Patriots, which was knowing each other, team unity, support, getting through tough times, by just being determined to do it and think of creative ways instead of looking back.
Right.
So, keeping guys together for 20 years is hard to do. We've been very successful and worked through everything. So, back to learnings, one learning is you can't replay that game that was last Sunday. And if you linger, right, if you linger on it, next Sunday's game may not be successful. So, I'm still working, plan to work a number of years going forward. And, I'm expecting my 6th and 7th grandchild simultaneously in mid-March.
Oh, wow.
twin girls. So I spend a lot of time with the 5 who are already here. And you saw Ann earlier today.
I did. That was a pure treat. I'll tell you that.
She makes sure that I don't get too far from center on anything. Yeah, but and as I mentioned, all my family are huge Patriot fans. My NFC team's the Panthers. I'm still a season ticket holder there. And that's why I was interested in, Cam Newton going up to New England this year. That was just an interesting change for both organizations.
Yeah.
So still following football and a big Patriot fan.
Well, there you go. There you go. And I hope you're taking a little more time off than I hope you're taking the time off that you deserve. I understand you got a place in the Outer Banks and spend a good time down at the shore too. So you must be taking some relax.
Yeah, we have a place. It's actually at Wrightsville Beach, and I've become an avid surfer.
Really?
And so the quest to lose weight, regain flexibility is a big thing. And we take some surf trips to Costa Rica where it's a little bigger, and so yeah, trying to you can't replace that feeling, Pete. I never quite got it the way you and John Hanna did, of when you just click and stick somebody, or hitting a golf ball perfectly. It's whatever that feeling is when you drop into a big wave. It's the same thing. So it's a little bit safer way of getting that adrenaline rush than taking on a defensive lineman, for sure.
I'll add no question. Yeah, the waves at least. Well, I guess the waves do beat you back a little bit, but I've never tried surfing. I don't know if you feel the same way I do, but I don't kind of fit the image, if you know what I mean. I do. I have a lot of friends that do it. In fact, I have a lot of friends that up here in New Hampshire that surf a great deal up here in the Northeast, and they do it in New Hampshire. They get ahead of the hurricane season, and they think September is the coolest thing in the world up here. Well, you remember Russ Francis? He's big time surfer, and he lived up in Hampton up here for a portion. In fact, you'll be interested to know that Russell's moved back. He's living down in Connecticut now. So, yeah, if we were a little bit closer to normal, I'm sure I would have seen him this season. He came back in 2019, and as Patriots alumni, the crafts give us access to all the tickets we need to get to games. So if you were ever a player, you can go to Gillette Stadium. We sure make sure that. And then we put you to work too, but we, they sit down and sign autographs or go to tailgates and that kind of stuff. So it was fun seeing Russell come back and be part of all of that too. He was on this show. But anyway, he just reminded me of being surfing. Now, if I was going to go to Costa Rica, I don't think I'd take a surfboard with me. I think I'd take a fishing rod.
Well,
I understand there's some pretty good fishing down there too, but anyway.
Yeah, right on the west.
Can you surf and fish at the same time? You're out there with them.
Well, I don't know about the same time, but I know you love to fish on the West Coast. The big game fishing, Pacific sailfish, are within sight of shore.
Yeah.
So it's a great place. People go to do that. And their beaches are pretty spectacular for many of them for surfing too. Just constant double overhead waves. But, knowing your figure, Pete, it's also a big yoga place. I'm surprised you don't want to go.
I do yoga every morning when I try to get my boots on out over the top of my Wrangler jeans. That's kind of like yoga, isn't it?
I remember when stretching became a big thing, and we were all stretching, and you came in the locker room one day and you go, "Oh yeah, it's time for me to stretch." That was it.
Yeah,
You sitting down
everybody was
already?
just, wasting way too much energy in this stretching thing. How many offensive linemen do you know ever pulled a muscle?
Yeah, it didn't happen that much,
No,
did
it
it?
didn't. And
You know,
who's
the only
the
time it happened, Pete, was when they made us run 40s, and Raymond Berry he outlawed that, so we never pulled any more muscles.
exactly? We didn't have to. Who was the Rick Sanford? Rick Sanford used to in the off season. He would lay on the locker room floor and he would stretch before a workout for like an hour and stretch after workout for about an hour. And he was always pulled up lame with something, a hamstring or a quad muscle or something. So it didn't take me long to correlate stretching with injury. That's why I
Well,
didn't stretch.
you won't be surprised that he became a chiropractor.
No, it didn't surprise me. He would, yeah, no, that didn't surprise me. But yeah, but there was way too much energy expended in pregame warm-up too. Everybody had their own deal. I just wanted to kind of stretch the muscles out a little bit and have a cup of coffee and drink some water and let's get this thing kicked off. But anyway, so you're stretching and doing yoga, huh?
Yeah, I will say, Pete, you talked about I feel like I was in the transition between the old NFL and the new NFL, because I remember vividly Linkaitis,
Hmm.
God rest his soul. What a guy, right?
Right.
At halftime, drinking a Coke and smoking a cigarette.
Not a cigarette. He smoked as many as he could in about a 12-minute span.
Well, I mean, and I also remember before I was drafted being in the Cowboys locker room, or may have been the Patriots locker room too, and there were ashtrays at every locker. So, that just made me think of the way we got into stretching and more advanced weightlifting, and of course Raymond was very serious about not drinking alcohol within 48 hours or something before games. Things changed a lot, didn't they?
Oh yeah, things changed an awful lot. I mean, I remember, and when we went on a road trip, the only thing that was scheduled was bed check. We didn't have a team meal. We didn't have team meetings. We didn't have anything like that. So we'd take off and go to some very fine restaurants all throughout the league. And then they started having, you could be back in bed by 11, you were all set. But then it was, you'd land, you'd have a team meeting, then you'd had a mandatory team meal. And then what really hurt is they cut the beers off after the game on the airplane back home. That was tough. Not that I was like, not that I couldn't do without it, but it was just became, kind of ritualistic that, you had to. So what Raymond did was, it used to be there was enough beer on the airplane. If everybody wanted to have a beer or two or three, you could have as many as you wanted. Well, then it got to the point where he wanted to manage that. So he'd take two, he'd had the crew take 2 beer cans and put them in a plastic bag and hand them out as people got on the plane. So you got 2 beers. But if you were a veteran enough, you got your 2 beers and the rookies 2 beers. So, and then he cut beer off altogether. There was no beer allowed on the airplane. I guess that was a responsible thing to do, but you're right. There was a transition. There was a transition from the old days to what it is. I'm sure it's even more different today. I mean, they're 24/7, 365. They should be. They're earning quite a bit of money when they're out there doing it. But they're all in with the diets and the exercise and the plyometrics and all kinds of different sciences that they've got. They probably do yoga too.
Yeah, I think, to be honest with you, I think it's all for the better, right?
Yeah, no question.
The game's safer. These guys are doing everything to stay healthier. They don't seem to stay healthier because it's still a rough game, but a lot of things have gone for the better. You and I using our heads almost every play. And
yeah, but if you train yourself to do that, and the helmets that they have now, we have fighter pilots in F-16s that don't have that kind of head protection, and some of these guys think they're invincible, and they don't learn proper technique because it didn't hurt. I grew up in the suspension helmet era, where it's 2 steps up from a hard hat, and but if you trained yourself properly and you had proper technique, you didn't often get hurt doing it. Now you put this kind of shells on that these guys are using, and it's they lost technique, is what I'm trying to say. But it didn't occur to me that it hurt that much.
Well, another Pete Brockism. We were in training camp, and you remember that we started hitting right away,
right,
and doing ridiculous 7-on-7 and goal line like the first day,
right.
And I remember,
how about half line scrimmage?
Right, I remember all of us, Pete, me included, we would have searing headaches, and then our head would stop hurting 3 or 4 days into it. And I remember you vividly saying, now I'm in football shape, my head doesn't hurt.
Right.
Well, what happened to our brain? I guess it just got numb.
Well, or you get conditioned for it.
Right, we got
conditioned to be able to hit, I suppose. You take a look at, and we could have a whole new episode on this deal, but a modern player, I don't think they suit up. They have 20 practices in full gear. They're allowed to do through the collective bargaining agreement. We had that done in 4 days in training.
Oh yeah.
And so the game's changed. I agree with you. These guys are bigger, stronger, faster. They're terrifically trained athletes, but they're not conditioned to take those kind of hits that we were, and I think you got to get in a boxing ring and take a few on the chin to get in boxing shape. And it's the same thing, I think, with football. You got to, not that you need to get head injuries, but you got to let your body know that it's going to hurt every once in a while.
Yeah. Well, I think the game's changed for the better. It's become it's become more skill oriented and less head oriented.
Yeah.
But
I agree. Ron, this has been absolutely wonderful. And I promised you, and I've committed this to more than once, but especially to you, because there's not often that you get to build a relationship like the guy lined up next to you on an offensive line. And you almost have to be one to know how that feels. And, but I make a commitment to you that sooner than later, we're going to get together. I'd love to see your family, your extended family. I want to meet every one of those 7 grandchildren of yours and all of that. I'd love to give Ann a big hug and make all that happen again. But it's wonderful reconnecting with you and with all the teammates. And I just hope that our viewing fans appreciate this, because it really means an awful lot to everybody that I think is part of it.
Well, I appreciate you including me in this elite group. I'm a long way from the Hall of Fame, and I think most of your guests are headed there, but it's always great to see you, and I hope somebody enjoys our interaction.
Well, I think they will. The other aspect of this too is, since it's not normal out there because of the COVID and all the compliance that we have to pay attention to. Some of the reason why Patriots alumni exist went away, and that is our opportunity to give back to the community through our Football for You offering. Did you know in 2019 we were in 25 different sites with a day camp for kids, and it didn't cost them a single dime, because we also had programs and events that helped us raise the monies necessary that we could fund those camps and not have to charge the kids a dime for it. Well, we can't be in the field with the kids, and our fundraising events, as fun as they are, included, an awful lot of people getting really close together in fishing tournaments and sporting clay shoots, our away game with the greats, all those type of things. But what we're using this in the huddle, these episodes for, is to bring sponsors on board that believe strongly enough in our mission that want to support what we do operationally and what we do out in the community. So it's our goal is to continue to raise money. And even if we can't get out in the field, we're going to reach out to those Football for You communities, the 25 different communities throughout New England that we've affected with that program, and reach out to them and see what they need and be able to funnel those much needed funds back into those communities. Maybe not with a football camp, but maybe with scholarship, or maybe with what they might need for equipment, or whatever type of program needs that they do. So if anyone's interested in contributing, donating, and enabling Patriots alumni to get out there and continue to make an impact in the community, you can find us at patriotsalumni.com. There's ways of accessing each and every one of us there, but you can certainly leave a message or note to make it happen. But thanks for tuning in. Ron Wooten, thanks for giving up an hour of, I know, a very busy schedule that you always have, but brother, let's get together sooner than later and make all of that work. Thanks for being part of this.
Thanks, Pete. Great being with you.
All right, partner. Well, that's it for today. Next week we have Vincent Brown, the Undertaker, is going to be with us. Vincent's coaching down somewhere near you. Let me think. William and Mary. He's at William and Mary, and he said he can't wait to do an episode with us, especially because they're going to be playing football in the spring down there at William and Mary. And I guess that the league, that Patriot League or whatever that league that they're in, are going to play some football down there. So he's going to join us next week. But anyway, Ron, I'm gonna end it with that. And anyway, we'll be in touch.
Thank you.
Thank you all for watching. See you, Ryan. Good to see you, partner. All right, buddy.